Hello, ChipGT here, and in this video I'm going to discuss all the obstacles and challenges that I had to overcome with my cabinet in order to install DOF Links. This video should serve as a guide to help you think about some of the challenges that you may have to overcome, and hopefully it'll give you a few solutions when trying to take care of these problems yourself. With that said, this is only about the cabinet rebuild that I had to do. No, I will not be covering anything for DOF Links in this. If you find this video truly helpful, please leave it a like, please subscribe so that you know when the next video comes out. Without any more delay, let's coin in and push that start button. A few days after ordering all the parts I needed, they started arriving at my door. Noodles and I began talking about where everything was going to go, and it was honestly an afterthought. I told Noodles about where I wanted to put some of the lighting, and he looked at me kind of puzzled and said, how are you going to open up the cabinet with the lights on the side right there? You're not going to be able to open it like a car hood, otherwise all the lights will get jacked up. I looked at him and realized he was right. I mentioned that we needed to think about all of these issues that we might have so that we could try to fix them, and all the features that we wanted to have in the cabinet that might pose a problem. As more parts came in, we decided to make a whiteboard sticky chart with all the problems we could find and test all the components to see how they worked and what would be the best placement. One of the first devices we tested were the solenoids and the shakers. I temporarily installed them in place and thought this would be a good time to run a few tests and see how they felt. The shaker potentiometer was set to about 50%, something I thought would be a good first test. When I came over into the output board on channel 12 and hit go, it started shaking violently, and we could see tack pins and some screws that I used to build the cabinet backing out slowly. We stopped the test and went back to the whiteboard. Noodles and I decided we needed to break things down into a couple of categories for the cabinet. First and foremost, the car hinge wasn't going to work anymore. Some kind of solution that would allow the TV to slide out the back. And from there, that stemmed a whole bunch of other ideas, like potential cooling in the future. Should we have it on a slide or on a skate mount? The back panel would need to be removed to be modded in order to slide it out the back. Maybe we could use some hinges or some quiet close hinges, or like a slide for a cabinet to slide out the back. And this also gave us an opportunity to free up some of the space on the inside of the cabinet by making a possible mount location for the audio amps to save space. The next category was look for opportunities to future-proof. So with that, I knew that we needed to have wiring for 12 volts and 5 volts with quick disconnects, and this seemed like a great place to have everything kind of like a central location for all the power and everything else. Look for an opportunity to put those in place. Then we had to look at, what did we need to improve the cabinet? First, we needed to rework the whole of the back box, and that is something that I still haven't completed today. I've temporarily created a solution with some scrap wood. I've run out of scrap wood. I've got to fix that. So in the future, expect to see a whole video just about the back box. All right. Then we needed to think about the control button arrangement and, where I could add, do I want to add a plunger, or, did I want more button control? Do I need extra flipper buttons, things like that. And then also when testing, we found out that the shaker motor was shaking screws out and backing brads out. So we needed to come up with a solution to fix that, and we decided to go with pocket holes. Also, with the control buttons, we discovered that, the coin door that I had buttons on it. We just needed to wire them up, so there was 4 extra buttons that I could just use there for volume up, volume down, DMD control options, an enter key to control all that like on a real pinball machine. So I was like, it's already there, why not try to use it, So with that, we decided we were going to fix the coin door and wire up the buttons. Also, on the lockdown bar, I wanted a special button for special features. Some pinball cabinets, like Star Trek, the one that was made by Stern, there's like a photon torpedo button, and you know, it'll light up and you can mash that. And next to the flippers, I decided I wanted to have 2 extra buttons. I could use them for nudging in Future Pinball because Future Pinball does not support an accelerometer. In the front end though, I could add like a help and info button. So help would actually tell you what the rules were for the table before you actually launch the table, and then the info button would show some nice artwork of the flyer and things like that. So all of these together called for some major overhauls to the cabinet. In order to tackle all these problems, I ended up rebuilding my cabinet in Fusion 360, and I decided to use pocket holes in the bottom panel of the cabinet. My bottom panel is about 50 inches long from the front to the back of the cabinet, and I subtracted in 1 inch from one side and 1 inch from the other side. That gave me 48. I divided 48 by 5, and that gave me the placement of about 1 foot per pocket hole on each side. On the inner side, I measured out about 5 inches on each side. So on this edge, that's about 5 inches from each side, and then I did the same thing for the front. 5 inches there, 5 inches there. Now, for the front panel, I measured down about a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here to get those pocket holes for there. And I did it on the other side as well, but in this illustration, I did not take the time to do those pocket holes, but just imagine that there are pocket holes there. Pocket holes are great because they give you about 15 degrees, a 15-degree hole. Here, I'll just kind of highlight that. A 15-degree hole that makes it so that you can have a screw come through and connect these 2 pieces of the cabinet together. Now, I recommend using 1-inch screws. These panels are 3/4 of an inch. That way you do not have a blowout of a screw coming out the other side. So 1-inch screws for 15-degree pocket holes ended up working perfect for me. And I went ahead and I installed all those first in my cabinet. And then I realized I needed to make some other cabinet modifications, with the first one being this back panel. Knowing that I needed to slide the TV and the tray out the back, the whole back panel here needed to just go away. I wanted to save that back panel though. I didn't throw it away because it was already ripped and cut down to the right dimensions for the left and right side. There's the right side. So I already had all the dimensions I needed to get from there to there. I was just going to cut this in a new way so that I had a new back panel. But in order to understand where I needed to go for that and how big to go, I first needed to figure out where I wanted to put my lighting. So we will go ahead and remove the right panel just for now so you can see that, and we'll go to a side view. Now I went ahead and I already put all this in here for you, but I'll try to describe it fairly quickly. So this is my lighting. Here, I'll flash it on and off so you can see it again. So there's the lighting. First, I knew that the matrix display right here, this panel for the matrix display, needed to be 3 inches from the bottom of this mount right here to here. And the reason for that is I wanted to be able to, in my track over here, I wanted to put that specialty molding with a tray for glass so I could slide a piece of glass all the way up in the future if I wanted to. All right. So with that in mind, I knew that this lip right, or this lip right here met the corner of the matrix. From here is the starting point, and I wanted to come down 3 inches. Okay. Oops. Sorry about that. So 3 inches from here to here. Then I created, using the same material, this is a 3/8 of an inch piece of wood. This is not the actual panel. This is the mount for the panel. So this is a 3/8 of an inch piece of wood, and I created a 3/8 of an inch piece of wood because I was worried about gap here for the television. So I made this little this overhang here come out a little bit beyond, so that when I set the the matrix down on there, it was resting on the back of this, and it had a little bit of a rest right there. And then that mounted to a new piece of wood that I put right here. Now, I'm going to go into lighting in another episode because obviously there's no holes here for the wires. There are in my actual cabinet, but just for the sakes of figuring out where the TV mount was, this is the route that I took. And then from there, I knew that the 155 pixel strip needed to start here at the top of this lip, and I wanted the other corner of the pixel strip to come close but not touch. And the reason for that is these strips actually have a little like weatherproofing gap on the outside here. So I wanted to give it enough room so that if my measurements were off or whatever, I could still get that piece of glass in, slide it in and out, no problems. So that gave me the basis of where exactly the lighting would be. And then from there, I could figure out where I wanted my TV sled. So that gives you an idea on both sides. And the lighting sticks out a little bit, and you know that works great because it's going to help hide a seam where the bezel that's on top of the TV lines up with the cabinet. All right, so here's the money, the sled. Okay. With this, I'm going to go back to a right side view so you can see it. I ended up doing a stack. All right. So the stack goes like this. There is a bezel. Let me see if I can't select it here. Okay, so here's the stack. You start with the bezel, and then the TV, which is right here. Just select the TV. And then there is the thing that the TV mounts to, which is the top part of the sled. So there's the sled top. The TV mounts to that. And then in order to support this, because this is a thin piece of wood, I want to say maybe 5/16. To support that, you need to have some edges. And I made the edges the same thickness. So I took some scrap wood that I had left over, and I ripped it to be the same thickness as the slide tray here. So this is a quiet close cabinet slide that you can find, you know, just about anywhere. Any of your Home Depots or your Lowe's or, you know, big box stores where they sell pieces of cabinets, you can find these pieces at. And you're going to have to adjust your sled based off of the thickness of the outermost point of the inner part of the slide and the outermost point of the outermost slide. All right. So when you're building your sled, you got to keep that in mind, is that it's the thickness between this point and this point. All right. So I'm not going to give you my dimensions. I'm just using this as an example. Also, my TV is not a big square box. I just did not want to take the time to, you know, build the TV in here. It's just, these are the furthest most points of the TV for the sled. So for your sides, I just made mine the same thickness as the slide, and I ripped it down to make a little box, and then I put the top of the sled mount right there. And then if you'll notice that with my TV, one side of the TV is pushed more towards the left side of the cabinet than the right side. And that's because this side of the TV where the screen is fatter than this side. There's an actual bezel on the TV. You can deframe yours if you want to make it a little more simpler, but that's what I ended up doing. But there still is a little bit extra, maybe half an inch longer on the bottom side of the TV. So I have the TV offset so that the screen is perfectly centered. And when you do that, that means that your mounting holes that you screw into the top for your TV also need to be offset. And you can take some measurements and figure out where the center, you find out where the center of the TV is, and you can tape it, and then you find the center of the top part of the bezel and you center it, and then you just take measurements from there and transcribe them over to the wood, drill the holes, and mount the TV that way. One of the key things to keep in mind though, when you're making a sled mount, and I'll just zoom out a little bit here, and I'll bring the whole cabinet back. There we go. You want it to be able to slide so that it's not interfering, and you need to have a little bit of a gap for wiring to hook up to here, or you're going to need to have a gap in the side here to have wiring come through there. I didn't want to have any kind of warping interfere with this because, you know, wood warps over time. So I made sure that there was enough of a gap, like enough of a shim there, so that it wasn't hitting that. That way when I opened and closed it, here so I created this nice little sliding point here. When it opened and closed, I had this gap was safe. See that? When it opened and closed. And there's enough of a gap here, maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, you know, depending on the angle. But I wanted there to be a little bit of a gap for light, just in case I wanted to run an extra set of wires there. And then also it works out nice because you'll notice that the bezel, here, I'll just come right here. The bezel is not the full length of the cabinet because you got to have a gap there. Otherwise you're going to have rubbing. And I didn't want there to be any rubbing. I wanted a nice smooth transition, and the lights really help with that. And here, I'll go to the back view. The lights here that hang out about 1/2 an inch will help hide that gap. All right. And then on the side, I made the bezel line up with the TV, and look, and the screen is actually right about here. So that worked out almost perfect for me with, here, I'll give you a different angle here. We'll close, come on, close. So when we come up, you see where the screen is. So here's the screen of the TV inside the bezel. It's almost perfectly flush with the light matrix that's here. So I get full range of my screen, and I've, you know, right next to those lights. And then on the side lights, those side lights line up, and then you have a little bit of an apron. Almost all real pinball machines have an apron right here that you can display artwork on or whatever. These lights will actually integrate and function with the buttons here in the plunger, and you'll see like lights strobing up and down. So it ended up working really, really nice for me, this setup. Now, part of this setup with the slide is also having this little bezel here. So I'll go back to the side view. This bezel, my TV is not a 4K TV, it's a 1080p TV, it's a 42-inch TV. So as you're like looking around, you're like, oh wow, that's not the whole length of the cabinet for a wide body. Yes, I know. This slide is also set up so that it's wide enough. If I wanted to upgrade in the future, if I wanted to upgrade in the future, I could, because I gave the slide a nice wide body. This slide is actually a 22-inch slide. It opens the full 22 inches. So that way I can access the internal of the cabinet. So that's exactly how this operates. Now, I know that the slides are not moving with my animation here, and it's because the file that I downloaded for that is just terrible. It did not allow for me to animate it, and I just ran out of time. But when closed, the idea is that this apron covers that gap, and then there's a little bit of a gap here. That's intentional because you have the lockdown bar, and the lockdown bar will come to about here. So a little bit of it will be under the lockdown bar, which is fine. This gap gives me enough room to have my button on my lockdown bar, and it also gives you enough of a gap so that you can have the lockdown bar mechanism here and the handle here, so that way you've got room. All right, so this is 5 inches for me. This apron is 5 inches from this edge to this edge. And it also gives you a nice place to mount, you know, an accessory speaker if you want to mount one here like I did in my previous episode. The thing to keep in mind though is where your button holes are for your flippers. So this is my flipper, and then this one is like a nudge or an accessory button. I use it for future pinball for nudging, and then when I'm in the front end, it allows me to change which software I'm in very quickly. So I like having the 2 buttons there. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You just got to watch out with your apron that your mounting brackets, so here's a couple of mounting brackets that mount the apron so that it doesn't move. And this becomes a rigid surface, so keep in mind this is a rigid surface across the front end. So ideal placement for your audio speaker is not anywhere near this. All right, an ideal place would be like here, and this is also this also becomes a rigid surface. So like anywhere in this area would be a good area to mount, you know, audio, because we don't have any other pieces connecting it. Now, how did I design the back? Well, let's go ahead and we'll just remove the slide for now, or the sled for now. And I had the old, I used that piece of wood, same exact piece of wood, removed it, cut it, ripped it down, and created this. This is a little bit better solution. So the first cut that I made was for the slide. Here, I'll pop the slide back in for the sled. I needed to make sure that when this was sliding that it wouldn't hit this when it came out, right? So this is just a little bit higher, and you'll see that this can still slide. You see that line? That's where the first cut was made. All right, and that became the upper part of that. Here, let me just close that for now. Just close it. And that's good enough for now. It's not fully closed, but you'll get the idea. All right, then I bought a gate latch. You're supposed to say closed. I bought a gate latch and put that there. This is a bad representation of how it is mounted because it was a file that I downloaded and it came with it being in the closed position and this being offset. This is not how it is on my cabinet. This bottom piece is actually right snug up against that, so it stays latched closed. Then I got a piano hinge and I measured the gap of the piano hinge. Again, this is a file I downloaded. It doesn't swing open and closed. I can't animate it, sorry. You get the idea though. So the piano hinge is there. This one I think was a 1 foot piano hinge. You can find some that are less than 23 inches. That's fine because you are going to want a little bit of a gap here in case for airflow. And that's one of the things that I needed to think about in the future was airflow. So I put 2 3-inch holes. This is 4 inches over that way and 4 inches up, 4 inches over on each side. And what that allows me to do is put 2 out fans blowing air out the back. And then in the future, I'm gonna do a hole in the front here to have air come up through the bottom and out through the back. And then also in this top part, when I go to redo the back box, I'm going to have a couple holes here, and there'll be another fan at the top of the back box up here that sucks the air down, and that way it all blows out one way. All right. And then I had another rigid bottom piece right there, and I added a pocket hole here. There's pocket holes on the top piece here. There's screws that come in the back there, and then for this I use brads to just go straight down through, but if you wanted to, you could put pocket holes on the back side and go up that way to make it a little more rigid, and then pocket holes on the sides to make it more rigid if you wanted to. You don't have to do that, but whatever works best for you. That way when I want to slide the TV out, all I have to do is unlatch that. This whole back panel comes down, and then this will slide completely out, allowing me to get access to the TV and all the internal guts. With that, that was my primary things that I needed to do to my cabinet in order to get prepared for DOF Links. As you can tell from the following pictures, this turned out near perfect. I decided to paint the internal of the cabinet completely black and the top part of the cabinet black so that the colors for the lights would really pop. And then I attached the lights and hooked up some of the DOF Links. But that's the next video. Please enjoy the following video to get a demonstration of what the lights look like, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
city.